Hi, I'm John Groders, and welcome to No Shame. Ambition, there's nothing like it. You set your sights on what you want, and you go after it. But Justin Tolley, a sought-after and successful movie producer, has a different idea. Find out today on No Shame.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid, no shame of the gospel of his name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid. No shame.
Welcome to the No Shame podcast, and this is Justin Tolley wearing a big hat that says Lex. That's a little bit confusing. I'm going to call you the wrong name, but Justin, you're coming to me from Lex. Is that right?
From Lexington, yeah. Actually, my son's name is Lex, and so when we were walking through the airport, and I saw Lex hats, and I was like, "Oh, we're going to be those parents." And,
wow.
Yeah.
You named your son after the town you live in. How cool.
His name's actually Alexander, but we call him Lex. We hadn't really heard a lot of people calling their son Lex from the abbreviation of Alexander. So.
Wow, think about that. If everyone named their kids after where they lived. I mean, I'd name my kid Beaver Creek, apparently, if I was going by that. Although I'm not in Beaver Creek, unfortunately. But thank you for joining us on the No Shame podcast. Guys and gals, this is Justin Tolley. And Justin, I've seen you, but I don't think we've ever met in person. But it's nice to meet you.
I'm honored to be here.
So, let's just say we're living in the dead center of the days of quarantine right now. So we're all locked up. Right? How are you handling these quarantine coronavirus days?
Well, being in film, I mean, it's pretty much just like I'm not on a film. You know, my kids you're small. They're 5 and 2. And so we're their world, so they don't know any better, really. And so when I'm home, when I'm not filming, I'm home, you know. And so we're pretty much in regular life mode, with the exception of not being able to go to a park and things of that nature. What
is your family? Can you kind of show us the picture of your family?
I have a wonderful wife, and was the best decision, easiest decision on my end that I've ever made, and 2 wonderful kids that.
Why does she come from money? Is that why you say that?
No. She's a 3rd generation Christian, and she is God's grace on my life, and so I didn't know that there were people like her that existed in the world. I mean, I've never met anyone with her abilities, her traits, her giving, her heart. And so when I saw her, I was just like, man, you know, she took my breath away. And
how long have you been married?
We have been married almost 7 years.
All right. Wow.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And your kids. So you got kids.
Yeah, we have 2 kids, and I didn't even think I wanted kids in my life. You know, I was a little bit older than when we got married, and didn't, you know, I thought it'd be cool, but I didn't, you know, have a strong desire. But man, when my son was born, it shifted my brain. It changed the way I think about everything. And I mean, just pouring out of me was, you know, all that I have, everything that I am is going to go to make you successful. And it gave me a glimpse into how much God loves me. And my wife says I cried, and I could see that I probably did, but I don't remember crying. But I mean, the emotions, I mean, you could cut them with a knife in that room. And I never knew that love could pour out of me without me being able to stop it, you know. And that's what having kids was. And with each kid, it gets better and bigger. And so we're very blessed.
Yeah, I remember those same feelings, Justin. When my little first daughter was born, and I remember laying specifically on the ground one day, and she's laying on top of my stomach, and I suddenly realized, my goodness, I did not know that I had in me the capacity for unconditional love.
Yeah.
Like, I really didn't think I could ever actually, that sounded really cool sort of theologically, but all my love was conditional up to that point.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me, I'm going to love this girl no matter what. And we have 2 kids as well, older than yours. So you have a boy and a girl?
Yep. No, 2 little boys.
2 boys.
So you've got Alexander and Lincoln. Alexander Hugh and Lincoln David.
So this is interesting because being in filmmaking and having a family can be diametrically opposed forces that are screaming for your attention. And how old are your kids, roughly? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No.
5 and 2?
Yeah. We just our little son just turned 5, and so they're at an age right now where they can still travel with me. I mean, we're thinking about homeschooling Lex this next year, and so they'll be able to still travel with me, and we'll see how that goes. We're gonna do a trial run, from now through the summer, and see how my wife likes it, my son how he excels with it, and then go from there.
This is a big thing. This is a big deal. And, for me, I didn't really start doing feature work so much until my kids were a little bit out of the house phase. I've been in production my whole life, but features are another animal. Not only do they take you away for that bulk of time where you're in production, but they kind of take your mind away too for a fairly large chunk. So you do have to be creative if you're going to have a full commitment to your family and a full commitment to the work you do. And 5 and 2, you're going to have to figure this out over the next 10, 15 years in a whole new way, man.
Yeah, right now it's all about, even when I got married, it was about being intentional. Like, my wife's love language is quality time. Mm-hmm. And it was already something I wasn't good at. And the first year we were married, we worked on 5 different features together. And she, it was like the first year and a half. We bought a house in Nashville, and after a year and a half, I think we had lived there maybe 3 weeks. And she looked at me and she was like, "Yeah, something's got to change." So she was like, she was raised in Lexington, Kentucky, her entire life. Went to the same church her entire life, and me, I've 40, 45 states. I think is what I've been to, and so it, definitely a different mindset. So I needed to be very intentional, and so, I prayed about it, and I was like, well, you know what? I will try to make a commitment to only do 2 films a year, and pour into her. And God has rewarded that, and we have been very blessed. I have the people that I've gotten to work with. I've known myself for over 40 years, and I'm not impressed, and so
maybe a bad mirror.
What's funny is my brother Jay, who he was in the Green Beret, retired from the military, but when we were younger, we both wanted to do film, and so I was able to bring him on a movie, Overcomer. So I brought him on that film. He was working in the production office, and I was walking around the corner, and I hear him talking, and he was like, if you ever, and this is just me overhearing him, but he was like, if you ever want to know what God can do with a life, look at Justin. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and I was the youngest of, I was the baby for 15 years. So my brother Jay, he was like, he said, we were always wondering who was going to take care of Justin, because he was like the dreamer and the uninvolved one. And he said, where God has brought him and the people that I've been able to work with and work for, is staggering. I got into film wanting to make Christian movies, and I wanted to make them well, and we have some of the greatest stories ever told, and so I thought, I want to make movies, and so coming out of college, the first feature I got to work on was Fireproof. And you couldn't ask for better people to study underneath and learn. I worked for a production company in Orlando who the owner of the company and the cinematographer actually shot Facing the Giants. And when I was working for them, I had no clue. My brother Jay told me about this movie called Facing the Giants, and he was like, you got to check it out, put it in your Netflix, and it'll come in the mail. It was back when they mailed out DVDs. And so I put it in, but it was at the bottom of my queue, and never heard of the film. But when I walked in for an internship at this production company, and I look on the wall, and there's a poster for this movie, Facing the Giants. And I was like, oh, my brother just told me about that. So I interned there for a little while, and then I heard Dave Nixon was the man's name, and he was on a radio interview talking about Christian film and how that was a passion of his. And so I went in, like a week later, we all had some downtime. I was getting some face-to-face time with him, and I said, hey, that's my heart. That's why I went to college, and that's, basically why I'm here learning. I want to make Christian movies. And And he said, well, he said, I think the brothers are getting ready to make another one, you know. And he was actually Australian, so I'm not going to try to do an Australian accent. But he said, he goes, you know, I can pass your name along to him. I was like, well, tell him I'll work for free, you know. I was like, if they have a couch I can sleep on, that's all I need. And Stephen Kendrick called me like a week later. I'm actually packing because I had seen this television show called Lost, and I was like, I want to go work on that, you know, because I wanted to know how they did it so well, production-wise, and so fast, because they shot 24 episodes in like 10 months. And so I was like, how do they do that? How do they manage that well? A lot of money is one of them. But I was packing up because I was going to go to Hawaii and try to work on the show. You know, basically had no connections to the show or anything like that, except my brother lived out in Hawaii, and I was like, I can crash on his couch. And so Steven calls me as I'm packing, and he's like, hey, we heard that you're available to possibly come and help us film. And I was like, well, yeah, I would love that. And he goes, well, I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, are you a believer? And I was like, well, yes, I am a believer. And he said, number 2, what do you believe? And I was like, it's a great follow-up question, you know. And I was like, I believe that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and you know, and he's the Son of God, and he died for my sins. And he goes, oh, perfect answer. And he said, number 3, he said, is there anything in your life that would take God's hand of blessing off this project? And I was like, wow, these people are serious. And I said, well, how long do you have, you know, to talk about this? You know, I said, I think we all have things we're working through. And it wasn't, you know, so that they could judge me or but they wanted to know specifically how to pray for me. And, you know, and they prayed about me even coming on the film. Every time they make another one, they pray about who's going to be on the film. And so getting to learn from people like that whose heart are sold out for the Lord, it's changed my dynamic of filmmaking. I went into film school wanting to be a director, and everyone does, you know, and I learned that out quick. So I was like, man, I need to pay my student loans. I want to eat, you know. And so I started looking for all the projects all the jobs that no one else wanted to do. And I was like, I'm going to get really good at those and learn, you know. And so shortly after that, you know, watching them walk through faith on each one of their films and how they're totally sold out to the Lord changed my my perception and how I take films. Because before I was like, well, I've got to be really excited, you know, to go work on a film. And now it's like, I just want to be where God wants me to be. I want to be used by him. If he doesn't want me directing, why would I pursue vanity and just what I think is my desire when it's not something God has even equipped me to do or has called me to do, you know? And so they actually had an idea for a television series that was not exciting. It was a Dr. Phil type format that Netflix had actually approached them about. And they said, hey, you want to come on and produce it? And I was like, well, I said, you could probably find somebody. I said, I've never done a reality, like daytime talk type show. And I said, so I said I could figure it out, but I said, you could probably find somebody with more experience that's better at it, you know, and save yourself some money, you know, of me learning on the job. And I said, number 2, I'm just not excited about it. You know, I said, it's not something that I look at and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm passionate about that. And Alex says, Justin, can I tell you something? He said, I've never been excited about any project that we've ever done. Like me, personally. He said, I know God's called me to it, and I serve him, and I follow him faithfully. And when I see
Wait, now this is Alex Kendricks who's saying this?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness,
he
okay.
He said, when I see God start showing up on set, then I get excited about it. He said, you know, this was a few years ago, but he was like, you know, I'm a 40-year-old man. He's like, I want to make, like, you know, Indiana Jones and Star Wars. You know, he goes, I don't want to make a movie about, you know, a black lady teaching another lady how to pray. I know nothing, you know, like I'm a white male. You know, what do I know about that? He said, but God has called me to it, and he said, so I'm faithful in that. And he said, at the end of the day, if you're only doing what you're passionate about, then there's no really value or reward in it. But if you walk as unto the Lord and you see what he does, that you're storing up eternal value, you know. And I was like, man, my heart is black. I need to change how I even think about movies. You know, I don't have to be excited. If God's called me to do it, I don't have to be excited about it. And now, it's filmmaking. And so there's always excitement about, you know, every project that I get to do. But it's really amazing when I see God showing up and doing things that, you know, only he could do, and that in powerful ways, and you start seeing the testimonies roll in, and it's like, man, Lord, who am I? Who am I to be in this field and to get to do these things? And I mean, I don't think I fill out a location permit better than anyone else, you know. And yet I've been blessed to work with the Kendricks and you know, to start out with the Erwins, and I did a TV show, episodic series, I guess. I don't know if you can call them TV shows anymore, but like an episodic series last year called The Chosen, that God is using in amazing ways, and I mean, you know, and it's awesome. I worked on a television show, Lost, and God started pulling my heart away from it, and because I felt like I was on a rocket ship to success. I mean, by like, you know, I started out, you know, delivering script and taking lunch orders, and moved up exceedingly quickly, and we were getting ready to do season 6, and you know, I left the show. You know, God called me away from the show, and I remember talking to Stephen Kendrick and him saying that, he said, if God's telling you to leave, one of two things are going to happen. Either you leave, which is great, he said, or 2, he will remove you from the show. He said, it's a lot easier to do it the first way. And so I left. Everyone thought I was crazy, and I started seeking the Lord, and developed a real intimate relationship with him, which is the foundation. I mean, if you do nothing else, even in your life, it doesn't even have to be film, but seeking the Lord, you know, in 2 Timothy, it talks about he will equip you, you know, and that both for your maturity, your refining, but, you know, in every aspect. Well, it's a really broad term, but it's true, you know. I mean, I feel like if we are good stewards in these small things, he puts us over larger things, and so that's basically my filmmaking journey, you know. And it's crazy because I'm just seeking the Lord, and God ground me down to powder, and he got me to a place where he was like, where I was like, God, I don't want to miss this. You know, this is what I need. I mean, you are my source. Apart from the vine, we can do nothing. And so whatever you have for me, whether it's you know, digging wells in Africa, supply me the shovel, tell me where to start digging, and I will faithfully follow you. And my phone started ringing for faith-based films. Like, I mean, I don't know how the people got my numbers, and I would go and work on one faithfully, and then with nothing after that, like, you know, maybe this is the last one. And then, like, the week we're wrapping, I get a call, and there's another film that's starting in a month. Can you come do that one? And since I left Lost, I've never had to call for work, because God has always opened the door, and it's staggering, and it's amazing, and we are and just everything God's done in my life is just a testament. You know, you look back, and you know, the Israelites used to build monuments to the Lord. Well, I can look back and walk down my life, and I'm like, man, God wastes nothing. And you know, and so with filmmaking and having a family, God has taken me to a place where I know I need him. So that's number one. And so you know, I need to spend time, you know, in his word daily, and either in praise in his word, or, you know, in repenting on a daily basis. And he's gotten me to that place. And so I feel like all other areas of my life start to prosper strictly because of that. And whether, you know, it's my relationship. And don't get me wrong, my wife's love language is quality time. And so there are times when I go to make a movie, I got to make sure, as we can call it, her love tank is full, you know, before a movie. And I, you know, I mean, there are times where I don't. And my wife is so amazing. 9 times out of 10, she will let me know exactly what she needs. 1 time out of 10, she doesn't, and I better get off my, you know, rear end and figure out what it is she needs.
That's where Gary Smalley comes in, and you can just, you know, read the 5 love languages and fill her love tank back up again.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fact that filmmaking has driven you into a journey of humility and sensitivity to the voice of God, and then he's actually put you working with pastors like Stephen Kendrick and the Erwins, and now with Dallas Jenkins. You know, you've had a very backwards journey from most people who come into filmmaking for very different reasons, and sometimes exit as pretty broken people. Have you seen that story too?
Yeah, and I think you know. Yeah, I mean, I would say the majority of people that get into film, if you get into it to be successful or to be wealthy, you're going to be brokenhearted. If it is just an avenue for you to be creative, pick up a guitar. learn a musical instrument, because there's a lot less heartbreak and a lot less time that is devoted. And but I hope that God gets the glory off of my story, because it's truly Him setting everything up, Him humbling me, Him basically knowing, teaching me that I need Him, and my value in everything is from Him, not from what I do. And so, I'm blessed to get to speak at a couple different schools every now and then. And I tell the kids, they ask me, hey, what's the most important thing you can do? And I'm like, get into the Word of God. Develop an intimate relationship with Him, because in every avenue of your life, He is going to be magnified. The Bible says where we're weak, He is strong. And we are broken, weak people that change second by second. But so if your foundation is in what you do, or in who you're with, or who you're married to, or success, or how you feel, that is a untethered ship. You have no anchor. But if your foundation is in the Word of God and Him, then despite any storm, and what I hope, because I've seen people that are broken, and I've talked to people in the film industry who have been divorced, or just raked over the coals by different productions. And I tell them, you've got two choices during this time. Number one, you can get bitter and you can let your heart get hard. Or number two, you can run to the Lord and you can watch Him transform, and use all of this bad for good. And you're going to be you can only, change your heart. And so if you run to the Lord and you surround yourself in Him, man, it's an undiminishing supply. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's never going to change. And He's, His grace and mercies are renewed every morning. And so you're never going to get enough of it.
We're talking with Justin Tolley on the No Shame podcast, being Zoom podcast, visual podcast. Justin, I don't know if I can get you to be a producer on my next film, but maybe my chaplain on the set, because I love the perspective you bring and a different role for you. You mentioned the value of really letting the Word kind of be your anchor in a storm. And, we're in a storm right now in America and all over the world. We're in a storm. There's no doubt about it. And there's uncertainty in the future. And you brought up 2 Timothy. I've kind of been reviewing, Paul's discipling this young guy, Timothy. And I kind of latched onto this verse just in this time, because I'm trying to make choices to live by the Spirit and not by the flesh. And if I live by the flesh, I can get irritated with the government, or I can get irritated with people. I just naturally can get irritated. Living by the Spirit has all these great fruits associated with it: love and joy and patience and gentleness. These are good things in these days. But 2 Timothy 1:7, this is what I'm digging in. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power and love and self-discipline. The Spirit God gave us. So I find myself feeling a little timid in the face of this unseen viral enemy that we're fighting. And even in the car, I find that I think I'm driving timidly. I got to stay 35 feet from that. Oh, a truck just passed me. Oh, don't breathe, put on my... There's this timidity that's sort of, I don't know, it feels like it's pressing in, and you can start to feel timid about your health or your finances or your business or your film. I'm in the middle of a feature film, right? So I was in Romania this year for all of January and February, most of the fall. We've already filmed 3/4 of that film, and on my schedule was to go back and shoot the summer scenes in May. Well, that's not going to happen. We're not flying to Romania in May. You're a producer. Schedules are not easy to come by. And when they get disrupted, you can start to feel a lot of things. But the Spirit God gave us gives us power and love and self-discipline. So I'm digging that. That's the Word of God being smarter than me, as always is the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you ground yourself into it, you're not shaken, during that time, because God has a plan. We pray over every film. I was in the middle of the film. We had just started prep. I think we were in our second week of prep, and when everything happened, they were like, "Hey, no more than 10." We went ahead and paused it, let everybody get back to their families, and we're prayerfully walking forward with it. And so, I get exactly where you're coming from. We hadn't shot a thing yet, but God has a plan, and He is it's going to be something better, than we think, and so we cover it in prayer. I think we, on the film, every Wednesday, we have a prayer call set up for the film. And so, James 4 says, you have not because you ask not, and, Philippians 3:20, is above all you can think or ask. And so, on those calls, we ask, we're like, hey, God, I know he's going to use this for our betterment, whether it's we get actors we didn't think we were going to get, or crew members, or locations are opened up. And so we, I've been blessed, and I've got a great team that I work with. But it's all on him. And so I think having that peace and being able to rest in it makes me more aware of whenever we're not filming, and I get to be with my family. There's a peace that I have because my hope is in him. It's not in what my bank account says, or even what society says, or if there's enough toilet paper at the grocery store.
Justin, you're a producer, right? Would you say is that your main role, as being a producer?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's no more undefined or ambiguous term that I can think of than the term producer, because it can mean a lot of different things. But in a movie, producers, I think you've described it as the whatever needs doing person or something like that. But you have a calmness that you're relating to us right now that maybe people, everyone has a certain amount of stress and pressure in their job, but the producer has to come up with all these answers, like you just mentioned, locations and actors and crew members and department heads. And the world is at stake with every single one of these decisions, right? And you've got a location and you've planned on it, and then somebody from the city council raises a stink and it falls through. You have a stressful job, I think, very stressful job. Is that not true?
Yeah, it is. It can be. It can be very stressful. And I think that if I was doing it on my own strength, I'd be in tears every day, like crying in the Porta John trying to eat a sandwich or something. I don't know, terrible visual. But I think like I said, we have to be grounded in him. At the end of the day, we pray over every decision we make. We want to honor the Lord in the way we treat people. Because making the movie is a ministry. Whatever God does with the movie after it's on its way, that's what he's going to do with it. And so we have to be good stewards while we're making the film, to be representations in the light of Christ, because we don't work with just Christians. We work with, you want to be salt and you want to be light, to people. And if it's us four and no more, then how are you really reaching the lost? And so we want to proceed with everything that God has called us to do, doing it according to him and being faithful to him. I think I had cut my teeth with some really amazing men, and I think their fingerprints are on how I make movies. I got to see the way some of the best do it, and then I got to see the way some of the entertainment best do it. And at the end of the day, if you're not I want to be able to sleep at night. And so I know if I'm loving on people and treating them as God has called me to, and if I'm, walking throughout everything that God has called me to do in the way he's called me to do it, then at the end of the day, I can go to sleep and know he is honored with the things I've done. And so I think that's where being calm and when, things fall through the crack. We've been on some where it was like, man, what is next? But at the end of the day, you can sleep at night and you watch God show up. I remember there's a great story on Fireproof, and this is one of the, I've shared this quite a bit, but we are, if you've seen the movie Fireproof, there is a car wreck out on top of a train track, and the train's coming in and people are trying to save it. Well, that location was I want to say it was 40-minute drive away from where we were filming. It was the next town over on the other side of that town. And I was like, we can't find, there are train tracks all through Albany. Why can't we just film it here? But they were like, we feel like God is opening the doors for us to film it at this specific location. And I think we were trying to film it over 2 to 3 days. It's been a while. And the train we only had for 1 day. And so you had to figure out what all your shots were that you needed with the train.
And we had a tow truck out there pulling the car off. I mean, even though we had stripped everything out of the car and we tried to make it as light as possible, it's still really heavy. We have 4 or 5 guys trying to lift this thing. And so we're pulling it off with a tow truck. And then when we go to reset, between takes, it's like the first, from take 1 to take 2, it was like a 40-minute reset. And it was like, oh, we're toast. We're dying. Plus, it was an hour-and-a-half drive, there and back. So you're losing that every day. And I'm like, this is rough. And I'm just standing there watching and not having any answers, right? And Steven is standing next to me. And there's some of the neighbors had come out and started watching what we're doing. Because anytime you've got a train and a car that's wrecked and a bunch of cameras and lights pointed at it, it attracts a little bit of attention. And so this neighbor came out and he was like, well, he said, man, looks like you guys could use a forklift. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're right.
Producer could have thought of that one, couldn't he? I wonder where he is. I'll tell him if I see him.
And Steven's like, yeah, we sure could. And the guy goes, well, I've got one at my house if you need to use it. And I'm like, yeah, because everybody has a forklift at their house. I'm like, of course you have one. But I'd seen God show up so much on that film. I was like, of course you do. And so I was like, well, where do you live? Because I'm thinking, let's get a trailer, get this, forklift over. And he goes, right there. And it's like his driveway went to right where, like, to our set, And so he drives the forklift. And it's this massive industrial forklift. I was thinking this one of these little rinky-dink ones. And he comes and scoops it up. And he was there with us all day. We ended up filming it on one day. And so we were well ahead. Steven nudges me and he goes, see, God knows where all the forklifts are.
Yeah, and if you made him drive the 40 minutes the other way, it would have been even worse.
It was a terrible decision. So, I have been humbled by God a lot with my logistical thinking to where, well, what's God thinking? I have booed decisions and just thought, this is not going to work. Or, man, this is not a good scene. And then I see, how they have honored the Lord. And then when it's made, just the power and the anointing that's on it.
Man, it is super encouraging to meet you and to talk to you, because when the Bible talks about the peace that is beyond understanding, that's just a phrase until you start to actually experience it and feel it. And, it's fun to talk about movies because they're interesting, and the work that we do, everybody can see. If we were plumbers, we couldn't show everybody the great work we do. But everyone has gotten to see the work that not everyone, but a lot of us have gotten to see the movies you've done with the Kendricks and with the Erwins. And now even I've had 2 people in the last one day tell me The Chosen is great. And I was with Dallas at Christian Worldviews last year, and we sat on a panel together, and I saw the first episode. But 2 people have told me, you got to watch this. So people get to see the work you do.
It gets better and better.
I can't wait to dive into that. And but this idea that in these there is a lot of stress and pressure in the filmmaking process, because the clock moves 10 times faster when you're in production than it does on any other day of the year, and the money is always running out, and the pressure is on. So to hear the way that you handle that and just seek the Lord, and you don't sort of relegate that to, I'll get to worship on Sunday, but this week I'm going to muscle this thing into my own creation, my own artwork. Listen, that's super encouraging to me, and I hope to all of us, no matter what we do or where we are. And maybe you're listening to this in a very awkward situation where you just don't know what's coming because your job is uncertain, and our finances and our country and our health and everything around us is as uncertain as it's ever been. And Justin is just saying, man, listen, God has this, and you can lean into him. And I'm not just talking my theological opinions. This is what's been born true that I've seen in my walk. I remember just a couple months ago, we're filming, and we're in Romania, and my crew is not all believers by any stretch, in a foreign country, and we're making a Christian film. And I woke up one morning with a clarity where God says, trust me. That was it, trust me. And I mentioned that to our unit production manager, a tough Romanian dude. I said, we have a lot of issues, the issues. And I said, but I believe God told me this morning, trust me. And instead of him poo-pooing me or ridiculing me, he, with all sincerity, looked with a smile on his face and he said, really? And I could tell it gave him some peace. And I wasn't making it up. It wasn't a fairy tale, but I leaned into that every day. As a director, there's a lot of stress and pressure on that in that job too. Trust me. So I don't know. I'd love to just tell stories, because these stories that happen on these movie sets, God seems to care, and he shows up with issues of weather and with issues of health. And when an actor suddenly can't make it a better one, this does happen when we've turned it over to him.
Yeah.
So, man, just bless you and your family and this film that you're 10 days into pre-pro. May these days be spent making that movie even better. I'm blessed. I got to edit the first 3/4 of the film, and there's 107 scenes, and all of a sudden I have nothing else to do but sit at this edit desk back here and craft these edits. So, maybe God just had to shut everything else off in my life, save for these podcasts, to give me the focus to work on these edits. Who knows why this, or how God can use what Satan meant for evil, God can use for good. So I don't want to claim that this virus and the death and pain it's causing is anything but evil. I'm not in that camp. It's evil. But God is not absent, and he can use what Satan meant for evil and turn it for good. Have you seen that?
Yeah. If you step back and you push into the Lord, I mean, he'll show up in ways during this time that astound you. I mean, he loves using what the enemy meant for evil for his good and his glory. And so if we get out of his way and, just follow him, then, he'll do it time and time again.
Justin Tolley, thanks for joining us. It was pretty easy to schedule you because you have nothing else to do. So you're going to be on for the next 7 straight days. Hope you don't mind. But it's great to meet you, and God bless you and your family. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you. God bless you.
Man, that went really fast. I mean, I got 35 questions I didn't even get to, but I don't need to because
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, right. The questions never matter at all.
Man, I could talk about film and what God has done in my life all day long. And so I'm honored to be on. This is not something I think this is the first podcast I've ever been a part of. I've heard radio interviews and stuff like that where, like Steven is in the room doing a radio interview or something like that. But God is great. He is good. And so if we can get the gospel out there to more and more people, I'm all for it. And hopefully it's encouraged somebody that listens to it to, this is just between you and me. Well, it doesn't have to be between you and me or whatever. But when we got ready to make Overcomer, I watch the Kendricks get stronger and stronger. I mean, they're men of their faith. But I remember when we were making Fireproof, their goal was to save one marriage. They were like, if we save one marriage, we're success. And I'm like, don't you got to make your money back? This is what I'm thinking. It's funny. We're at it was the San Antonio Christian Film Festival back in the day, and he invited me to come as his guest, and so I'm there with him. And Fireproof had just finished its theatrical run, and just $30 million in the box office. We made it for $500,000, but like Sony got like 99.9% of that. And I'm looking at him, and I was like, does that make you mad that Sony's making all this money off of something that you guys did? And he goes, I could see how you'd say that. He said, but let me ask you this. He said, TV ministers, they pay cameramen and they pay editors and they pay sound guys. They pay to get their project made. And then they pay a monthly licensing fee to have their sermons up, so it cost them a lot of money. He said, here we had a secular company come in, take our message, push it out to the world, and it didn't cost us one penny. And I'm like, my heart is so black. Right. Come on, I was like, yeah, man. But and then to go from if we save one marriage, or if we turn one heart of their father back to the Lord, we're success. Now it's when we were getting ready to make Overcomer, they said, Alex comes in because we were shooting on anamorphic lenses, and we had crew members that our key grip and our gaffer they work on big stuff. And I mean, the Fast and the Furious and Avengers and stuff like that, and we're having these guys come in. And he goes, I know we're getting better, more experienced crew. And he said, I know we're getting better equipment, better cameras. And he said, but I was reading Jeremiah. And he said, and basically, God told Jeremiah to go and tell these people, you have forgotten me. That you're relying on your own understanding. I have blessed you. I have prospered you to the Israelites. I blessed you, prospered you, and now you are relying on your own understanding. So I'm going to ground you down to powder until you turn back to me. And he goes, I do not want to be ground down to powder. And he said, so we need to seek the Lord, even though we have all this great stuff. We need to make sure that we're making the movie that honors him. And then Steven takes it a step further, and I've never heard any producer or in a pitch meeting, because this was during development, Never heard anyone say this. He said, he said, well, we got to take it a step further than that. God told Isaiah, I want you to go to these people. This is what I want you to say. You're going to go and tell these people. No one's going to change. No one's going to have a heart change, but I want you to do it anyway. And so Isaiah did it, and God was pleased with Isaiah. No one changed. No one had a heart change, but God was pleased with Isaiah. He said, we've got to be able to make this movie Overcomer, and no one sees it, but know that we were honoring God with every decision and step we made, and we know that God will be pleased with us. And I'm like, damn, it's just, it is, it is their ministry, and so getting to go and work on every one of their films is like going to Bible camp, but God has, honored them, and He gets all the glory for it, and so they're, and their movies they're great, and they challenge me in my walk, but I get to take that experience to other films, and so I've learned a lot from them just because of stuff like that.
For us, that is, like you said, it's like going to camp. I saw a little video yesterday. My wife caught it, and she said, "Here, watch this." And this is a common critique, and a young person, I don't remember the name, but had said, Christian movies suck, and here's why: they're made by preachers and not filmmakers. And then he went to explain how, his idea of how a scene should be edited, and then he picked some pretty bad examples from some not so great films. But so we hear this a lot, and certainly the Kendricks hear this a lot because they actually don't even deny it. We are preachers. So,
They're on to us. I've heard Stephen say that.
Oh, man. But I don't know. We all hear this all the time, and I love that Stephen and Alex, they're on to us. That's like Jim Carrey being accused of overacting, admitting it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These are movies get criticized. No matter how good they are, no matter how bad they are, critics are critics, and many of them have never made a movie, never had to drive 4 hours at 2 a.m. to get there before the sun comes up and get everybody. It's just a ton of work to create every single frame on that film. And some are better than others, I get it, and all the rest. But I find myself really encouraged every time I get another peek behind the curtain of how other Christians are doing their films. And the Erwins who you've worked with, I've gotten to know them a little bit, and at just these conferences where I've got a film and they've got something. I did a panel with Andy at the last ICVM, I guess it was, and we were up in front of a whole room for 2 hours, and we just got to talk back and forth, and man, he's so honest. He's like, yeah, we really blew it, and we got really into it. He doesn't candy coat anything, and it just won me over so much. Like, we don't have to fake it for the people who are asking us questions. We can just tell them the truth. And I just, I had a whole new appreciation for how those guys go about their process, and I know you've worked with them since October Baby.
They're super creative, and and it's amazing. And then, they'll tell you, like, Woodlawn was not a success, and it was a hard movie to make. And they ended up doing a post-mortem on Woodlawn and opened it up and said, hey guys, you can anonymously tell us how you feel. And I think they said they had it was over 100 pages. I want to say it was 140, but it might not have been that much, but pages of just how they treated people wrong. And it was like, a cold shower, they said. And but what's amazing about that is God is surgical, because Fellowship of Christian Athletes have used that movie, and thousands of young, sports, players have come to Christ. They've given their lives to Christ watching that movie. So he was surgical. He still used it for his glory and his honor, and then used it to kind of, draw Andy and John back into him. And then they go out and make I Can Only Imagine. And and I hear, I wasn't a part of that one, but I hear, I was on a different film at the time, but I heard from the crew, that, man, this was the way it needed to be made, and we were treated so well. And so... Well,
they definitely, I heard him talk about that experience, Woodlawn. I sat there and thought, man, I got to hand it to this guy. The fact that you're willing to take criticism and not just shrivel up, but re-examine was a super, super powerful exhortation. I appreciated that a lot, very, very much. And you're right. Then, God didn't cut their career short then, did he? No, now they've got this huge kingdom deal and awesome.
You look at Dallas. I don't know if you've heard Dallas talk about his experience, but man, if you get a chance, go and listen to him, because he was making Gavin Stone. He had actually called me for Gavin Stone, and I was about to have my son Lex, and so I was like, "Sorry, man, can't do it." And they were being very gracious, and they were like, "Well, you're due in April. What if you prep from home for like 3 or 4 weeks and then came out?" And I was like, "Man, I don't know. My first kid, and I ended up taking a year off and just spending with my kid, which was another amazing testimony of God." But
wow,
he goes and does Gavin Stone and had pretty much like a 5-picture deal kind of set up. Like if that thing was a success, he would have been making bigger and bigger movies, and God used it to humble him. And he says, "I wouldn't have made The Chosen. Had Gavin Stone been a success, I would not have made The Chosen." And he said, "And The Chosen is better than me." He said, he goes, "I go back and I write these scripts, and I'm like, is this as good as? There's no way, that I came up with, stuff like this." He said, "Because I've seen my work and it's not this good." And so The Chosen is really, the 5 loaves, 2 fishes. It is God multiplying everything, and I mean we made it in a way that it has biblical truths all throughout it, and the Bible was our reference point for everything. And we wanted to make it in a way that honors Him and challenges people to get into the Word of God, and it's it's really good. If you haven't,
I'm gonna go watch it. I will
Yeah.
definitely. And I've done a lot of work. I've done 80 episodes in Israel, so I know they shot in Texas, but I've done a lot of work in that. And I got a call this week from a group in London. I don't know if these calls. Nothing usually, but they said, "Would you be interested in working on a series called The Fisherman?" I'm sure they've never heard of The Chosen. But I ran into these producers, and I just randomly ran into them at a post house in Bucharest, and we met briefly, and they know I'm interested in biblical material, and so they sent me a couple of their scripts. So I don't know that's going to lead to anything, but I know as soon as I saw these scripts for The Fisherman, I'm like, well, that's kind of what I know Dallas was doing, and I'm super into that same kind of thing where we make the Bible come to life, and we really try to understand its cultural and what did it mean to the people who first lived it, who first heard who were the disciples. I work with a guy named Ray Vanderlaan, and we've done a bunch of episodes with this guy, and he's just an incredible teacher, and probably one of the, and he just challenges a lot of the sort of assumptions that I've had about the Bible without undermining its inspiration, and one of which was that the disciples are a bunch of old men. And he's one of the first guys to say they're kids. They're 14 to 16 years old kids. Now that he was teaching that back in the early mid 90s, but that sort of radically changes the authorship of the Gospels anyway. I was just talking about The Chosen right before this podcast. A buddy of mine broke the law, walked in and said he just loved the way they portrayed Matthew. And they said they gave him Asperger's. So I'm like, really? Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's great because you'll hate Matthew. And in the same episode, your heart will be broken for him.
Oh, good.
And it's, you get to, and that's what the goal is. We want people to experience everyday people, things we all struggle with, get to know and care and love these characters. And then, because you've seen the first episode, so you know what happens at the end of the first episode, so I'm not spoiling anything. But basically, it shocked you, because we're calling this lady Lilith the entire time, and then you find out it's Mary Magdalene, and there are some hints dropped along the way. But when Jesus shows up, he does something only he can do, and so every time he is represented on the screen, that's exactly what he's doing, and so it's more about all of the disciples than it is just about Jesus, but it's the dependence and the logical thinking that everyone has, and then here comes Jesus doing something that. It's not status quo, and but anyway, it's really good.
I'm excited to see it.
It'll get addictive. Yeah, every episode you'll be like, wait, what?
When stuff comes out that's good, whether it's Veggie Tales or whether it's whatever, I can only imagine. I get pumped. I get inspired. I get proud. I don't have any reason to have pride, but I get proud of them that they. Thank God they did it. Yeah. I literally pinched you talked about, hey, I got to be willing to take on these roles that maybe wasn't what I was passionate about, and I'm feeling a little guilty because I'm like right in the opposite of that. I have to pinch myself every day on set that I've got a crew of 100 people and a cast that I think is incredible. it's an amazing privilege and responsibility to write and direct a film. And I never know if I'll get another one, but I'm in the middle of, a project right now that I think is so valuable. I just think it's so important. I just pray I don't mess it up, because the true life of Richard and Sabina Wurmbrand in the Nazi years, and the way they learned to love their enemies, and their story of how they came to Christ, it's so good and honest and gritty. And so I'm in this sort of Schindler's List type of filmmaking right now, which we're shooting all in Romania and with all Romanian crew and cast, and super, super cool project. So yeah, I'm definitely not having to dig ditches in Africa right now. Hey, look, God, if you need me to do that, but yeah. I'm with Stephen. Man, if I can try to not have to be ground to powder in this process, I'll try to do it faithfully. And I also like, you touched on it. It's not just the finished product that's a witness. It's every day with every person that we work with. And I'm sure the stories that thrill us the most are when we see crew members and casting directors and all these people start to come to Christ or explore Christianity or show up at the local church, or, we're giving out Bibles to people. We've highlighted the parts we want them to read. And they're like, wow, I've never had one. These are the stories that are like fuel to our fire. And I work with my wife, so my wife is the producer, and so we're at a phase in life where we can travel together. We can spend months on the road, and the kids are out of the house now, so we've made it to that stage in our world, and it's just a great blessing to be able to work with her. Her gifts and talents are totally different than mine, and she does more of what you're doing, and hiring and contracting and budget, and I'm getting to work the other side of the fence. But anyway, I appreciate it. I appreciate it a ton, and love what we're doing. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, man. I appreciate
Great to meet you.
Give me a call. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I will. Maybe we can work together one day. We really do these podcasts. We broadcast them, but they're mostly so I can meet cool people. Let's be honest.
That's smart. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah, Justin, thanks for your time today. Bless you and your family.
All right, man. Bye.
Have no shame. No, we are not afraid. No shame of the gospel of His name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid.
No Shame is a weekly podcast where John Groders discusses life at the intersection of faith and culture with all kinds of interesting and inspiring guests. Subscribe to the podcast today by going to johngroders.com, select the podcast tab, and hit subscribe. Listen whenever you have time, but don't miss any of these life-giving conversations.